grateful and honored that we have this forum to where we can highlight the candidates and so that we can also learn about their platform and about their priorities. And I'm also super grateful that we have these candidates showed up and came to have this conversation with us. But certainly want to also appreciate all the people who made this event possible, including all the staff from the TransLatin Coalition Institute. But certainly, I want to also express my appreciation and gratitude to the amazing moderators who are going to help us lead this conversation. Obviously, this type of forums are important for us to learn and make informed decisions. And so we're hoping that this session is informational for you and that you make the best choice for all of us. Without further ado, I thank you and I leave you with our amazing candidate.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So welcome. Hi, good afternoon. I'm Tandiwe Abdullah.
And I'm Alex Cohen. Thank you for letting us share mics. We are very grateful to everyone here today that you can join us for this important conversation. The mayor of LA is the city's CEO and has significant power. The mayor directs city departments, appoints general managers and commissioners, and has the very crucial responsibility of proposing the annual budget.
The coalitions hosting this event have reached out to all top 4 candidates, or 5 candidates, both Democrat and Republican, based on polling and fundraising, including the incumbents. We hope that they take the opportunity to join us to give the community a better understanding, especially of their budget priorities.
And as you can see, we're joined here now with mayoral candidate and current city council member Nithya Raman. We'll be asking a series of questions about her policies, her priorities, but we wanted to begin by giving her the opportunity for opening remarks, roughly 2 minutes, give or take. Thank you.
Great. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Nithya Raman. I am an urban planner by training. I have 2 10-year-old children who are in the 4th grade at the school near my house. And I'm running for mayor because I feel like this moment in Los Angeles, when we are faced with a lot of big challenges in LA, extraordinarily high housing costs that are driving people out of the city, continuing homelessness crisis that we're spending a lot of money on and seeing only incremental progress. Climate change impacting communities through rains, floods, and fire, and a lot of local and national economic turmoil and an Olympics up ahead. We are at a time of real change and urgency here in Los Angeles. And I am running for mayor because I want to take on those challenges with urgency and with focus. And with a real attention to ensuring that people's service needs are being met by the city. I have been really focused on issues related to housing and homelessness during my time, both before council and on council, and have had the opportunity to work with many groups that serve the TGI community. And I'm here partly because I want to share my ideas, but also because I want to learn about the priorities so that we can incorporate them and I can incorporate them into my work should I be mayor, or incorporate it into my work as a council member and continuing to engage on these issues going forward. And I'm excited to hear about what these questions will unearth and about priorities. And I really look forward to engaging with this community, not just today, but on an ongoing basis. As we already have in the office, we have been deeply engaged on these issues through the office's work, but look forward to continuing to engage as we move forward. So thank you very much. And I apologize for being masked. I'm a little under the weather. Thank you.
Thank you for your opening remarks. So going into our first question, current Mayor Karen Bass recently proposed a budget of roughly $14.85 billion. The bulk of that, more than $2 billion, is slated for the LAPD, and roughly $700 million for homelessness. As a sitting council member, you have control of discretionary funds and have voted repeatedly on city budgets. How has that experience influenced how you would develop a budget as a mayor? What specific changes would you make in terms of what gets cut and what would be protected?
Thank you for that question. Is there a time limit for answers? Okay, great. Okay. So thank you for that question. I haven't sat on the budget committee during my time in council, but I've engaged with the budget process, and I've deeply engaged with the city's budget over my time on the body. And right now, Los Angeles is facing a very dire budget crisis. Last year, we had $1 billion budget deficit and we also had the potential for 1,600 layoffs on the table last year. And we staved off those layoffs. We staved off kind of responding to that budget crisis by cutting every single city service down to the bone. That's why now it takes longer to fill a pothole. That's why now streetlights are out across the city, and the average repair time for a streetlight takes up to a year. But that is also why many other essential programs across the city are getting cut. Support for immigrants, for example. In last year's budget was nothing. The council put back some. This year, it's $1 million that's been allocated for immigrant defense during a time when immigrants are facing real challenges. But that number is actually less than half of what was being funded during the last Trump administration, when right now the challenges for immigrants on our city streets in our city are so much more intense. Why do we find ourselves in this budget crisis? One of the biggest reasons why we are in the hole as a city is because of a contract negotiation that happened in 2023 and every contract negotiation in the city happens with LAPD's contract being negotiated first. And that contract was a very large contract. And when that contract was before the council, it was supported by the mayor and it was before the council, everyone knew on council that we did not have the funds to pay that contract, the increase in that contract. And that contract also sets the scale for other contracts in the city. And between all of those, we basically found ourselves in an extraordinarily tough fiscal position. And that contract moved forward, to me, because of politics. The police union funds city elections to the tune of many millions of dollars. They're one of the most powerful forces in local city politics. And despite the fact that the city and many leadership in the city knew that we didn't have the money to move forward with that contract, it still moved forward. And so to me, I think moving forward from now, how would that experience, which led us to the budget crisis that we were in last year and still the diminished service quality that we're getting today, how does that inform my priorities on the budget? Well, I would be thinking about how do we budget for city services and city employees in ways that accommodate the extraordinary cost of living in LA. I know it costs a lot to live in LA. City employees deserve to be able to have a cost of living that affords them the opportunity to live here. But how do we do that in a fiscally responsible way that still preserves our ability to deliver services for people? How do we make sure that we're actually budgeting for infrastructure in advance of putting together a holistic budget? Meaning, how do we actually understand what infrastructure needs we have? We don't have, for example, right now, we're the largest city in America without a capital infrastructure plan. And we don't know what we need to invest in over many years here in the city. And what we end up doing is putting together a budget where we budget for infrastructure based on what's left over from everything else rather than actually planning for it. And so my priorities would be different. I would be looking at fiscal responsibility in our contracting and budgeting. I would be trying to make sure that we were understanding our infrastructure investments, ensuring that we were investing in things that would limit liability costs. We're also paying out huge liability payments for faulty sidewalks, for streetlights falling on people, for infrastructure failing across the city, and also making sure that we were able to fund the essential services, including homelessness response, including support for some of our most vulnerable communities as we move forward, and trying to think about the budget as a holistic document as opposed to a document where we put money when available for things that I think are essential priorities for the city.
Thank you so much for that answer and for your transparency. The final part of that question was, what specific changes would you make in terms of what gets cut and what would be protected? Is there anything you'd like to speak to that?
In terms of what do you mean, what gets cut and what gets protected? Like if we're making cuts right now?
Yeah, when you talk about the holistic approach and how would you make that happen? Where would you find the funds if you had to cut something in order to make sure our city runs well?
Yeah, I think a lot of the issues that we were talking about have long-term implications. So we will have to deal with kind of a restricted city budget going forward. One of the things that we have often invested in is things like, there's, for example, a discussion around a $17 million helicopter for LAPD, a big infrastructure investment for the city. I think this is the kind of investment where you could say, is this kind of tool really necessary for PD right now? And are there ways to take some of those dollars and invest them rather in things like immigrant defense, support for undocumented individuals who are getting kicked out of HUD-funded housing, which is something that we were just talking about in our pre-meeting. So I think it would have to be a thoughtful kind of understanding of what our budget was looking like, and looking at specific investments and trying to figure out what we need right now, what is absolutely necessary right now, and how we accommodate some of the biggest needs that are here right now in the context of federal budget cuts and real danger on our city streets.
You mentioned secure housing in your opening remarks, and on that front, we'd like to ask two questions. As you may well know, as many as 40% of homeless youth in the city of LA identify as LGBTQ+. If elected, how would you invest city dollars to uplift these communities and underserved communities of all ages? Also, as a council member, you have voted in favor of budgets which have included Inside Safe, even though that program has been designed around enforcement models that you have also voted against. Can you explain what has influenced differences in stances that you have taken on homelessness during your time on the city council?
Yeah, so let me take the first question first. So you're saying, how would I support the needs of LGBT youth?
Secure housing for LGBTQ youth and underserved communities.
Yeah. So this has been, I used to represent more of Hollywood, but I still represent a piece of Hollywood, and a lot of people who are experiencing homelessness in Hollywood are youth. I've met many people who come here seeking freedom from oppression from other parts of America or even other countries, who see Los Angeles as a place of refuge. For them to be able to be themselves and to live out their lives in their truth. And I am proud of that aspect of Los Angeles. I want Los Angeles to continue to be a place that welcomes people who are seeking freedom from oppression. I think that we need to do more to ensure that this population's needs are served, and especially at a time when federal funding cuts may impact resources for LGBT youth and everyone. I think we need to think about utilizing some of the more flexible funding that we have with less rules and regulations from sources that are locally or state funded. So we have the United to House LA money, which is local money and doesn't have restrictions that are set by HUD. We have Measure A dollars, which are coming through La Casa and through the homelessness funding and local solutions funding from the county. We have HAP funding from the state government, which also has fewer restrictions. We also have city dollars that we've put into homelessness response that we have the flexibility to target towards particular populations. And so I would really be looking at using all of those dollars to ensure that we could meet the gaps and the needs of this population, while we have also specific sites that we can operate that could be kind of focused on LGBT youth, but could also be culturally kind of informed so that they can invite LGBT youth in as part of a broader population. So we have a site opening in Encino, which is a transition age youth site, which I'm really excited about. There's significant community opposition to it, but we've been kind of supporting it and moving it forward. And I think there's opportunities there to ensure that those sites have the cultural competency to be able to accommodate LGBT youth as part of their service as well. So I would be really trying to focus on taking our most flexible dollars, our state-funded and local-funded and county-funded dollars, to ensure that we're able to meet the needs of youth who are here. Your second question was about Inside Safe and enforcement. I would say that my understanding of the Inside Safe model is not that it is one that's premised on enforcement. That hasn't been my reading of it. I'm open to other interpretations and to learning from other people here about their experiences of it or their understanding of it. But Inside Safe is a housing and sheltering effort. It's based on a broader set of practices called encampment resolution, which we do in our district. Sarah actually was with me as a staff member, and we worked at numerous sites in my district using this effort, which is you go to an encampment, and rather than one person getting sheltered, you offer shelter to every single person in that encampment, and you offer shelter that is designed to support people's needs. In other words, ideally not congregate shelter, right? Shelter that offers a little privacy, shelter that offers dignity for people, a separate bathroom, but the potential to bring in pets if they have them, the potential to bring in a partner, a couple together if people are coupled off, which happens a lot and prevents people from moving indoors. And when you offer shelter to everyone in an encampment, they're able to move indoors, and I would say 99% of the time people take that shelter, and then we're able to house everybody, and then and people go indoors, and it is a purely voluntary operation. People are not forced inside through encampment resolution. But what we found is that the vast majority of the time, when offered shelter, dignified shelter that meets their needs, people accept that shelter. And I think there's a lot of misapprehensions out there that people don't want shelter. People want to be living on the streets. I don't believe that. In my experience, that has been very rarely true. When offered shelter, people take it, especially if it's good shelter. And I think that encampment resolution model is a good model. And it is one that addresses the needs of people living on the streets effectively. I have other critiques of Inside Safe. I think it is.
Well, perhaps because this was something that came up in speaking with one of other candidates. Many people, for many reasons, will have shifts of opinion. For example, with ULA, a measure you initially supported and now maybe have discovered some things about it. Can you explain for voters who are curious, when you have a shift of opinion, what informs that when your support might change or waver?
Yeah, sure. So on Measure ULA, I still support it. In case people don't know, Measure ULA is the mansion tax, which we passed 2022, which basically takes a 5% tax off of property sales that are over 5 million, and then a higher percentage tax off of property sales that are over 10 million. And it was designed to take those tax dollars and put them into eviction defense, housing construction, affordable housing and social housing construction, and rent relief dollars. It was a citizen initiative, so a lot of different groups got together, put it on the ballot, and it passed, and I was a supporter of it. I'm still broadly a supporter of this. I think this money has been absolutely integral for Los Angeles, has given us access to eviction defense, rent relief that we didn't have access to after the pandemic was over and ARPA dollars stopped coming in. And it is the first guaranteed and large source of affordable housing funding, construction funding, that the city has access to at all. So it's really important. But the tax doesn't just apply to mansions, even though it was dubbed the mansion tax. It also applies to multifamily housing units, so apartments, sales of apartments. And the challenge here is that it was impacting the construction of new apartments here in the city of Los Angeles. And I think there's a housing shortage here in the city of LA. And I saw that there was data that came out that compared new apartment construction in the city of LA versus the county of LA, and showed that the city of LA, which has the ULA tax, there were many fewer apartments being built than the county. It showed that in the city of LA, we had fewer apartments. We had a decline in the number of new apartments being built, whereas in San Diego, which faces similar macroeconomic conditions, there was actually an increase in the number of new apartments being built, including affordable housing. So for me, this seems like a problem. When you have a city with a housing shortage and there's a policy that's making it harder to build housing, including new affordable housing, I think we need to take that seriously. And so I proposed an exemption on new multifamily construction for the first 15 years so that we could make sure that new apartments were being built. And so that ideally, over time, people would have places to move to here in LA. More people can move here, and this city can continue to be a place of opportunity for people. Yeah, so you asked what changes my mind on things, and I would say that I do engage with research a lot. I try to look at the data on the impacts of particular policy decisions. And when I see data that was unintended, when I see outcomes that feel like they were unintended, I try and take actions that can impact that and change that.
Thank you for your response. I think it's going to help with this question as well. So when you won your council seat in 2020, your platform was supported by DSA LA and Black Lives Matter LA, specifically the part of your platform that explicitly called for shrinking the LAPD's budget. And yet shortly after announcing your bid for mayor, you said the city needs to maintain the size of its police force. What sort of budget do you envision for the LAPD if you are elected? And what would your budget focus on in terms of where you would want to allocate funds?
Yeah, so I do think, I did say that I think we need to maintain the size of our current police force. Our police force has shrunk significantly from the time that I was first elected and continues to shrink every year. I think it's important for the city to be able to respond to public safety calls for help quickly. And right now, our primary public safety response here in the city, it continues to be LAPD. And when calls for help are not answered, when calls for service are not answered, I think people feel unsafe. People lose faith in the capacity of the city to be able to respond to their needs. And I think it's important to maintain our capacity to be able to respond. At the same time, I don't think that all calls for service require armed officers to be able to respond. The problem is that right now, that's all we've invested in. And that's the situation that we find ourselves in. We now have a very small investment in unarmed response in two places. The Circle program, which responds to calls for service related to homelessness specifically, and something called the Unarmed Model of Crisis Response, which responds to like mental health issues and can also respond to calls related to homelessness. But these are small programs. They only cover a patchwork of the city. They don't cover the entire city. And when you call 911 and you say you want an unarmed crisis responder, you can be on hold for 45 minutes or 50 minutes before you can get that person to come out to you. That's a real problem. So my envisioning of what a real public safety response would look like would be the following: that we build out a full system of unarmed crisis response across the entire city, that you have the ability for 911 call takers to pick up the phone quickly, both for armed and unarmed crisis response. It has to be a quick, both have to be similar timings. And you have to build up enough capacity among 911 call takers to be able to respond to both armed and unarmed response in the same time. To me, you have to build out that system. And I would want to ensure that we were able to take as much of the calls that don't require armed officers to respond off of LAPD's call load. Mm-hmm. And I think that would actually reduce the call load on LAPD significantly, because so many of the calls coming in don't require armed response. They are asking for help in other ways. They're asking for help for mental health issues. They may be asking for help with someone who is experiencing homelessness, but there's no crime being committed, no assault, no violence. That's not even a situation where an armed officer could even respond and do anything. They're not trained to do that. And I think once you can build out that system, you could have a very different system of public safety response that looks different from what it looks like right now. Oh, and the third thing I would do is really to look at LAPD deployment. Where are they being deployed? How many officers do you actually need to maintain our quick response system? These are questions that we don't have answers to right now. How many people are on the streets right now? How many people do you need to be there in order to be able to respond to all calls for service that require armed response? I think that's a question that we absolutely need to answer. And I would use these efforts to build out a full system of public safety response that I think would look different from what it looks like today. But I will say that I don't think I have the information to say how many officers exactly, and how much would it cost. But I do think it would look different from what it looks like today. I think it would be holistic. I think it would include both armed and unarmed crisis responders. I think it would be a citywide system. I think it has the potential to cost less because LAPD costs a lot. I think if you're able to take call load off, you could actually change the numbers and still be able to have responsiveness. But I think maintaining responsiveness is really important, and I will fight for that.
Thank you. Just following up on some of your answers. So does this mean that you would prioritize spending in your budget if you were elected as mayor for the unarmed model of crisis response? And how do you anticipate the LAPPL dealing with that priority, if that is a priority for you? And also, what would you say to the people who supported you initially in 2020 because of that commitment to shrink the police force, if you've changed your mind about that?
So I think I actually would say that your first question was, would I prioritize spending for the unarmed crisis response? Yes, absolutely. And I've pushed for it in every budget cycle. And we've grown that response every year in the budget cycles. And I'm proud of that work. We've expanded Circle to more parts of my district. We've expanded UMCR to more parts of my district. We've actually gone door to door among storefronts and to homeowners groups to teach them about these programs and to make sure that people are calling and using them. So I'm proud of that work. But I think right now, this patchwork system with long wait times and you have to know that you are in the zone for it in order to actually call and use it, this is not good enough. I think you really absolutely need to build out a citywide system of unarmed crisis response, one that is a single point of contact and one where calls are answered quickly. And what would I say to people who supported me initially? Look, I think responsiveness on these issues, responsiveness on public safety response is really important. And I feel like I'm pushing for a system that is realistically going to get us to a fairer, more just public safety response system, one that has better and safer outcomes for people. And I've systematically pushed on that work every year that I've been in office. I've also worked really hard in my own district to ensure that when we're responding to encampments, when we're doing work with homelessness, that we are trying our best to minimize engagement between people who are experiencing homelessness and LAPD. That's a third. It used to be a third of all instances of police violence were related to people who are experiencing homelessness. And so we're really trying to do the work to minimize police violence, to get people off the streets into safety and ensure that we're minimizing engagement that has led to so many dangerous outcomes. And I will continue pushing for that. But I will also say that I think that we have to be capable of being able to respond to 911 calls. And we have to be able to build out a full system that is able to respond to residents' needs in a responsive and responsible way. That is what the residents of Los Angeles expect of elected officials. And to push for change without doing the work to build out that citywide system, I think would be irresponsible. But I am committed to doing that work going forward. I don't have control over the full budget right now. I don't have control over the entire city right now. I have my piece of the work that I try and push forward in my district. I have my piece of influence that I'm trying to use to change systems. But if I had more control, I would be building out that full holistic system of public safety where we have full unarmed crisis response and the ability for us to respond to other issues as well.
We're going to move to another issue where here in the city of LA, you cannot please all of the people all of the time, but it is a key part of your platform. You've talked about creating an Office of Tenant Protection. Can you explain how you see this affecting LGBTQ plus Angelenos and other underserved communities? And how can you ensure that protecting renters doesn't unduly burden landlords, specifically mom and pop landlords who rely on that rental income to pay their mortgages?
Yeah, so that is a really good question. So right now, the housing department has bureaus that deal with tenants' issues, but they don't have a mission necessarily of serving tenants, right? It's part of their work, but it is not their mission to ensure that people are able to stay housed. It is not their mission to ensure that renters who have protections have those protections in place. And I think it's important to name what that office needs to be doing and embed that work into the mission statement and the goals of the department. Our goal is to keep as many people housed as possible, right? Our goal is to help communities stay preserved. Our goal is to make sure that people who are facing eviction notices are able to get rent relief, are able to get the support they need to stay in housing. And I think an office that has that as its mission will have a different approach to that work than if you're doing it as part of the kind of the bureaucratic work that you're doing for everything else. Why I think that this wouldn't negatively impact landlords is because in our office, we do this work to some extent already. Both landlords and tenants call us for casework and support. And we try and create a system here in our office and in the city, which is fair for everyone, where landlords who are dealing with issues are able to have their issues resolved, whether it's slowness from the bureaucracy on answers, whether it is understanding, what are the new rules and regulations that are in place from the city. We're able to serve them effectively. And to me, that is what we need to create, a system where the rules are clear, predictable, where everyone who participates in that system is able to have access to a city that is attentive to their needs, can answer questions quickly, can resolve issues quickly, and can make sure that problems are addressed. And I think that's really the system that I want to create. And I do think that system can be fair for both landlords and for tenants.
So some candidates in this race have had years of experience in elected office while others do not. How has serving on the city council shaped how you would approach the position of mayor? And how would you engage other city council members and departments to trust you if they had concerns about your entering this race after initially endorsing Mayor Bass?
I think the experience of being on city council is really useful for the city. I think the city is complicated. The city has a lot of departments. It's not always clear where blocks for policy change are. It is not always clear who is actually in charge of a particular activity, who makes the decision on certain kinds of funding. Sometimes you think it's a department, and then it's like some analyst at the CAO who's actually making those decisions. And having the ability to have a map of the city that I understand from my time on the city council, and to be able to use my analysis of the processes that have failed to hopefully change them if I become mayor is exciting to me. And I think the ability for our city to work better, I think is one that many, many residents would welcome. And I think it does take some knowledge of the city in order to be able to push for quickly those things that need to change in order to achieve better goals for LA. As for working with other people, I think that I didn't know a lot of people before I was elected to city council. I didn't know anybody in the building before I was elected to city council. I think I'd met one council member once, and didn't know anyone else. And despite the fact that I had run against an incumbent, despite the fact that I had critiqued some of the work that the city council had done, I was able to get onto the city council and work effectively in partnership with other council members to push legislation forward. That has been important legislation. I helped lead the passage of the largest expansion of renter protections in LA in 40 years, including universal just cause eviction protections for every renter. I was able to initially pass decarbonization of new buildings, which was later scuttled by a court case, but it was a big change that would have had real environmental impacts that required negotiation with other members, with labor partners, with the mayor at the time. And I was able to do it because of my willingness to work with people, to set my ego aside, to put other people, to listen to other people, to listen to their input, to take it in, and to adapt my policy work so that we could all kind of work together on it. And I hope that I will be able to do that if I'm elected mayor as well. I think I've demonstrated my capacity for working in partnership with other people, and I would want to keep doing that.
And for our next question, we're going to hear from one of our guests who's here with us today. I will turn it over to Tara Russell-Slavin.
Hi, good to see you, Councilmember. Tara Russell-Slavin, I use she, they pronouns, Chief Strategy Officer at the Los Angeles LGBT Center for Informational Purposes. So I think you know, and we've talked about, right, just how intense right now the attacks are by the Trump administration against the TGI community in Los Angeles and across the nation. Last summer, we saw Children's Hospital Los Angeles, which is the largest provider of care for TGI youth, basically rescind that care under threats by the Trump administration that, we got to be clear, were not in fact laws, right? They were threats, and they stopped that care. And we're seeing this care across the country come under peril. We've seen more than 40 hospitals take similar actions, but Children's Hospital LA was one of the first in the nation. And I'm wondering what you would do as mayor, right, to ensure that TGI youth have access to essential health care, that they are legally, and which includes enforcing California law, which says that it's legally required. Thank you.
I think that the mayor's office and the mayor's role is one of the biggest powers that the mayor has is convening authority and the ability to take meetings and to use their bully pulpit for pushing certain outcomes. And if I were mayor and dealing with this issue, I think I would use that convening authority to bring healthcare providers together to see how we could address funding gaps or potential threats of funding gaps, potential legal threats, to understand what healthcare providers were dealing with or what they feared would happen, and to see what tools the city had or the state government had to be able to protect that care going forward. Could the city attorney have sued the Trump administration? Could the state attorney general have sued the Trump administration to protect some of that funding? Could that work have been done in partnership with our healthcare providers locally? Could we have worked with nonprofit law firms or pro bono legal firms to be able to sue for that? A lot of these lawsuits have yielded real results for preserving dollars, preserving care. So that, to me, that convening power and the ability to kind of determine, where we could find the resources to protect care would be one that I would be excited to use to fight for issues that matter to Angelenos, and specifically for the TGI community. And I do think that we've seen that proactive work yields results in terms of funding protections, care protections, pushing back, rolling back of certain kinds of regulations. And I would want the city to be more proactive and engage in more of that work.
And that brings us to the end of the list of questions from the coalitions gathering here today. We want to extend the opportunity, if you're willing and available, to take questions from our audience.
Sure. Maybe I can take one or two questions. Or I can also stick around. Okay.
If you wouldn't mind, can you come so that we can bring you the mic? And this goes for you as well, Pamela. Okay.
Hello, thank you so much for being here. So trans women, especially trans women who are on social media, have been being censored and attacked, and I know that because you've been running for mayor, you've been a victim of like bullying and people saying horrible things, and trans women, we experience that a lot. So how can the city make sure that we protect trans women who use social media to share our stories, who are being censored and by the government, if you have any power to do something with that?
Oh, wow. I think I would go back to the same thing. I'm sorry that you're experiencing that. I'm sorry that that's happening. It is, online bullying is horrible, and can really mess with you. So I'm very empathetic to this issue. Again, I think I would go back to the answers that I provided already, which is, can we use our convening authority to talk to the social media platforms? Some of them are even based here, like Snap, and their leadership is engaged with civic issues. How can they help us figure out how to minimize this kind of bullying and violence, online violence? And censorship. And what are our legal pathways to address it, if there are any? Can we use our public legal resources? Can we use private sector legal resources to be able to fight for these issues? Can we work with people like the civil liberties? Yeah. So I don't know what would be most effective in response to that, but
no, because it's been an issue. Because like the girls will get thousands and thousands and thousands of hate comments, and then like we'll put out a post that isn't like hateful or like anything. It's just us existing, and the meta platforms will just censor us or delete our accounts. And so like this has been something that trans women and adults have been talking about, is how can we make sure that we are not being censored and that we are able to show our beauty and our power to the world and share our stories. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Does anyone else? Okay.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Pamela Molleda. My question is, why LAPD get a high percent of the budget of Los Angeles? And you would be support the budget for LGBTQ community.
Sorry, say that. I didn't know.
Why LAPD get a high percent of the budget of Los Angeles, and you will be support the budget for LGBTQ community?
Yeah. So I would absolutely support a budget that would support the LGBT community, and I think there's different ways that we can look at sources of funding that we have locally at the county level and at the state level that I would really want to make sure that we're utilizing to support the LGBT community in the face of federal attacks. Why does LAPD get so much of the city's money? I think I talked about earlier the contract. That you see that bar that, when you look at the budget for LAPD, you see that a huge percentage of it is going towards the PD's budget. The size of that budget is determined by the contract that I pushed back against and voted against. And, I'm getting punished for it in this election. Like the LAPD union has only targeted one candidate, and it's me, because I've spoken up about why too much of the money, because of these politically motivated contract negotiations, are going towards PD and taking money away from other essential services that we our funding in the city. And this has been part of what I've been talking about on the campaign trail, something that I think I'm very vocal about. And, you know, when I'm in office, I think I would make those decisions differently. So thank you. Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you all so much for having me.
Do you mind one last question for social media?
Sure.
Thank
Okay.
you so much.
Yes. In the name of the TransLatin Coalition, we would like to ask, as you know, we've been advocating to be included in the city's budget.
Yes.
Unfortunately, we've been left out. If you happen to be elected, would that change? And how do you specifically plan on supporting the TGI communities?
Yeah, so I would be very excited to make sure that the needs of the TGI community are being met, especially at a time when federal funds are cutting into services that used to be provided through HUD and through other resources. At this time, we need to make sure that our local flexible dollars, our state dollars, our county dollars are being spent to support the needs of populations that are being left out or punished by the federal government. And I want to do everything in my power to ensure that that happens, which means scouring these funds, looking at what kinds of resources can be redirected or given to organizations that have cultural competency, that are already serving the TGI community, and that can continue to serve them during a time of real fear and lack of safety in the community. So I look forward to doing that work alongside you.
Thank you very much.